steadily it rises. Public preference for Lincoln Continental as the symbol for today's luxury motoring.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, and we finished the Barrett-Jackson 11 cars we went through that sold at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale 2023. So kind of going to get back into the groove of doing some eBay reviews as well as bring a trailer and whatever else we find out there. If you haven't, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Of course, it's free. You can also check out Lincoln Addict Podcast, however you find podcasts, or go to lincolnaddict.com, my website, and you can find ways to listen there. So this one's a little intriguing. 64 Lincoln Continental, and let's jump into it. This is located in Hazlet, Texas, I believe is how you say it, and they are asking $96,500. What I like to look at as well, and I don't often talk about this because I think I forget, is if you look over here, we could see the seller. The seller has 15 ratings, seller feedback, or maybe 15 or 3 items sold. That was a little deceiving. 15 stars, however they do it now. I've been using eBay for so long. We used to always go by stars. But bottom line is when you click here, it takes you, they have 1 feedback and 3 items sold. So not a lot to go on there. Not saying that, I wouldn't buy a car from someone that has so low of ratings, but of course with eBay, you're protected and, you've got all of that stuff, but it's just, the seller doesn't have a lot of ratings. So I'd like to point that out. What we're going to see here is a decent amount of photos. First off, you got the 64, as we mentioned, convertible. You got the top up here. For those that don't know, obviously these cars don't have the pillar there because it is a convertible. So you've got that, there's no B pillar. You have the side shot. We can see that this car is aired up because it does have air suspension, which I am a fan of. However, I know that's not for everyone. It has the wide white wall tires. That also sticks out. Oftentimes people, want to have the correct white wall. I'm a fan of the wide white walls. Not everyone is. What we can see here is a nice piece of property. You got a classic car back here. So someone more than likely that knows their way around classic cars. These bumpers look pretty good. The gapping in here looks pretty good. And everything looks like it is there. Of course, 64 is distinctive. And the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s, you can tell them apart once you look at them enough simply by looking at the front grille. The 65 has these 5 bars, if you will, and they come to a point right here. So it comes right here to these 5 points. And again, they're very, very distinctive. These cars are also, a lot of people call them Kennedy cars, and that was because JFK was killed, unfortunately assassinated in one of these cars. It was a limo. Just to be clear, his was a 61 with a 62 grille. They had, retro, or they had outfitted it with a newer grille, obviously the president, and he was killed in 63, in November 63. But again, these cars are often called Kennedy cars. For anybody that's new to the channel, you'll hear people all the time say that, especially when I'm driving mine. Oh, is that the car that JFK was in? You'll hear that often. Again, what I can see here is this car looks really, really nice. If I didn't have a 64, I would be looking at maybe buying this car if the price was right for me. What we could see here is it has a Montana tag. So the ironic thing about this, I believe I'm going to get this right. I was at a local car event here in Tampa, Rides by the River, and we were walking with my buddy Kirk, and I looked over at this sports car and I said, man, it's weird. It's got a Montana tag. I'm pretty certain it was Montana. And Kirk asked me, hey, do you know why it has a Montana tag? I'm like, I have no idea. And he went into this whole thing, which I guess me being tied to cars and liking cars, I should maybe know this. But apparently there's a loophole for tax purposes on why people will, I guess, title their car and register it with a Montana tag. If you guys know anything about that, comment below. That was the first I had heard of it. Kind of intrigued on maybe what the workaround is there. But I just just popped in my head, for instance, seeing the Montana tag. The 64 has these bumper inserts, which I do sell these. I sell a billet, a version of these, and I sell a sticker kit as well. The sticker kit can go on these originals, or it can go on the aftermarket billet aluminum ones that I sell. I have a set of billet aluminum ones on my car that were made from this exact scan, so they're this exact size. But I say that because these inserts in this trim piece, that is specific to 64. So if you're looking at the back of a 64 and you're like, well, how do you tell a 64 the difference between and a 65, because they're so similar? Number one, this panel piece here on the deck lid will not be here on 65. It's just not there. And in 65, the inserts here are a little bit different. They actually have grooves in them. And I can also get those made with the grooves if you want. And you can visit my website, LincolnAddict.com, or send me an email. I typically get those made within about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But I say that because I like to kind of point out the differences in these cars. Now, I did a video not too long ago talking about the taillights, and from 61 to 64, my understanding is it's the exact same taillight in those 4 years. 65 comes along, and you basically have the cage taillight. They still bolt right in here, so you'll sometimes see people put a 65 taillight on an earlier 61 through 64. But just like to kind of call out, my understanding is, I believe, and you guys could chime in, 61, 2, 3, and 4 have the same, I'm guessing, part number. They look exactly the same. In the other video that I mentioned, I do talk about the difference in the lens, slightly different, and the, of course, cage. What we can see here, though, in this car is this paint looks awesome, and I would assume that this car has been repainted at some point. These deck lids, as I mentioned in the past, they do tend to get holes in these deck lids. And my understanding is that is from the adhesive that was used that is between the skeleton and this outer skin, if you will, the outer sheet metal. So you will often see, even very nice cars will have little rust holes here. And my blue 64 has those. You eventually have to get that remedied. You would assume on a nice car like this that hopefully someone has remedied that. I always like to look on the inside of the deck lid and see what it looks like. But again, from the outside, this looks really, really, really nice. Here you can see an aired out, so to speak. So basically with air suspension, some of you know, you basically just, let the air out of the bags, and the car is going to go down to the ground. This one does have AccuAir. I've talked a little bit about that in the past. If you want more information, certainly check out. I did a series on this channel talking about what suspension components I chose for my custom 64. And this has AccuAir, and basically, if you have the E level installed, you can have it when you start the car. The system automatically levels up to your drive height. And then you have a couple of other preset heights that you can set. And that way, like if you're driving down the road and you're cruising at your drive height and you see some roadkill, for instance, in the middle of the road, and you're like, I want to raise it up some, you could just tap on the number 3, and then the car goes up to whatever you've set that number 3 preset at. You can also manually push, the front up. But bottom line is this one is aired out, of course, in this photo. Now, although I like custom Lincolns, I would tell you guys I love stock Lincolns just as much. And as I get older, I appreciate the stock cars even more because of the fact they're becoming kind of more of a rare breed, it seems like, although I've got a 64 that is custom. This car to me looks really, really nice from what we can see here. These cars are low already, kind of low slung, if you will, from the stock height. So, even if you have a stock car, you kind of look at it with a Lincoln and you go, man, it almost looks like it's lowered, but they're kind of low already from the factory. This has obviously been modified and has air suspension. We can see the windows are all down. This one is almost all the way down. Sometimes you will see that they won't go all the way down depending on the car. But, obviously it is nice to be able to have them go all the way down. This one could just, they may have just let off the switch at that point. But I do like to point that out. We can see it has the automatic headlight dimmer, which was an option, as I mentioned in the past, right there on the dash. And the wide white wall tires, again, that's a nice touch. It has the 15-inch stock wheels on it. In 64, they went to 15s from the 14s that were previously used, and you have a different hubcap in 64. So these are the 15-inch wheels. Here's that front three-quarter kind of money shot, so to speak. What I'm seeing here, again, is you've got a nice piece of property with a nice metal building. You have a couple of cars. I like to kind of visualize what's going on here. Is this person, rightfully so, are they basically kind of working on cars? They fix them up a little bit, which, by the way, is a business that's been going on a very long time in terms of, people buying a car, customizing it, and then quote unquote flipping it. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But bottom line is, it looks like this person, knows their way around classic cars. This is the great front three-quarter shot, again, kind of showing the cars aired out. Paint looks good. No dents here. These bumper ends look probably nicer than the ones on my 64. I've got a few dents on mine, of course. So although I point out things that I look at, certainly my stuff isn't in perfect condition. So don't ever think that that I'm frowning upon the stuff that I'm looking at. Here's a rear three-quarter shot. So a nice shot showing how low these cars go. The description, I believe, mentions that it rides like a dream. These cars ride fantastic when they're stock. You could imagine a 60-year-old car that has original suspension. If you took a stock Lincoln and you replaced the coil springs, the leafs in the back, the bushings, control arm bushings, things like that, it's gonna ride like almost like it was brand new. But even a car, one of these Lincolns that's 60 years old, that has all of the original stuff, they often ride really good. And then when they're airbagged, like this one, typically they'll ride really, really good as well. So you don't really lose too much if you have air suspension. So if you're looking at, hey, I kind of want one that's airbagged, but I want to be able to have a nice cruise without feeling everything. Certainly if there's shocks on it front and back, which I assume there are, it's going to ride nice. Here's that front three-quarter shot there. Like to kind of look at the gapping on the doors here to kind of see. It doesn't look like anything funky's going on. This is probably a nice original car with, probably a respray paint. The good thing is we've seen now the top up and down, so we know it does function. We see the photos are taken in the same spot. So presumably, all of this was taken at the same time. We can see the Acura controller. Often these are left kind of right on the seat. That's where I leave mine. I have the same controller, and that allows for you, again, to kind of adjust as you're cruising. If you hit a cruise spot and you want to kind of air it down some, you can hit the number 1 if you've got that set as the lower preset, or you can individually tap like front down, rear down, and kind of air it down a little bit, as you're kind of cruising down the strip in your 64. Here's the front three-quarter shot bumper, the front shot. Bumper looks really good. I like to look to see if there's any cracks in the lenses. These are individual, these 4, and then the 4 on the back. Those are specific screws. I've lost a couple of these over time, and those are specific. So everything looks like it's there. And what we're seeing is it looks good. The interior, I'm assuming it was redone at some point. I think it looks good. The seats, I'm assuming the seats were redone. The door panels more than likely are original. But this looks good. We've seen a lot of cars where the interior doesn't look very good. And certainly if you price out having someone locally do your interior and you buy a Lincoln that really needs the interior done, you can easily spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000+. Depending on if you go vinyl, depending on if you go leather. I can't really tell in here if this is leather. It's kind of hard to tell, but certainly those are the type of things you would want to kind of find out. Hey, were the seats redone? We'll, of course, look at the description here in a moment as well. A couple more photos as we go through. So something, as soon as I saw this car, I knew where this car was from because I look at these cars pretty much every day. So we'll talk about that in a minute. How did I know? Well, the carpet was the number one tell. So I got a good memory. So I was like, I know where this car was from. And this car has the aftermarket AC, which isn't a bad thing. But bottom line is you don't see this as often as you would think. We could see here this one trim panel looks like more than likely it was replaced at some point with another with a from a parts car, if you will. It has some kick panels in here you can kind of see, but again, this carpet I'm assuming was changed out over the course of time. Certainly doesn't look to be factory as far as I can tell. You guys could kind of chime in. It does have the heel pad here, but it doesn't look factory to me. We get a little bit better glimpse of the seat here, and it's hard to tell. My guess is that it's vinyl, and again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the rear seat seemed to look a little bit better than the front seat, but that's just my take on it. What we could see here is more than likely some sort of aftermarket stereo system in here, which is probably Bluetooth. Again, we got to look at the description. I know I kind of skipped past that. I wanted to get right to the photos. And we can see hood up, kind of pulled up by the shop there, and not much to really mention there. And again, these pieces, these are kind of getting harder to find. So if these were lost or they were really bad off, and these I believe can get pretty expensive to get these factory pieces from, quote, the usual suspects. And that might be the end of the photos. Okay. So what do we have here? A 64 Lincoln Continental is a modified vehicle, interior, and drivetrain with updates to interior and drivetrain. The owner has had it for 4 years. The vehicle runs great. It's mainly used for weekend drives. It's a clean 64, original 430. When they say with updates to the drivetrain, I'm curious what that is, because it does say original 430. Everything works as it should. Car is well taken care of. Recently installed new convertible top, new head unit and glove box. Again, subwoofers in the trunk. Can remotely operate the system, or clean moderate system. Forgive me. Clean moderate system, not too crazy. Car is on AccuAir with E-level, so E-level allows for the car to auto level. Stock 15s, of course, with Coker wide white wall tires. Drives like a dream. Top works flawlessly as it should. Chrome trim, 8.5 out of 10. Some minor imperfections. I think it's a decent description. Here's what we're missing before we talk about the next piece. If this person does have a shop, it's hard to tell if there's a lift in there. I personally, if this person has a shop, pull this car up on the concrete, even if you have to put a floor jack under it with jack stands, take some photos underneath it. Let's see what it looks like there, right? Even just the front cradle, if there's one photo here, a photo underneath the floor pans, maybe from the side where you're getting both, or one from each side, and then one underneath the trunk. For a car that is a buy it now of almost 6 figures, this thing is definitely appealing. It's a color that's pretty sought after, kind of a rose color, we often will refer to it as. And if you're getting your 6 figures, to me, you got to show me, why is this car worth this much? We've seen airbag Lincoln sell for 50 grand, 60 grand. I know one recently that did sell for 6 figures, but it had a lot of paperwork to back up that it had some money put into it. So, that's what I would definitely say. We need more photos. Now, if the top is working like basically it's said to be, I want to see inside the trunk. He mentions there's a stereo system. Okay. Where are some photos of that? We know it has AccuAir. Just making sure I didn't miss any photos here. We know it has AccuAir. How is all of that mounted? Where are the compressors mounted at? Certainly if the top is working, it's going to take 10 seconds to open the deck lid. Take a photo underneath the deck lid. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, is it rusted underneath there? When they painted, or when someone painted this car, did they take the deck lid off and remedy all that stuff I mentioned sometimes under the deck lid? Again, want to see all that. And to me, you've got some good money shots here. Certainly they don't mention, hit them up if you want more photos. To me, that's just, I don't know why someone doesn't provide more, or say, hey, if you want more photos, let me know. Maybe they're just looking for someone to go, boom, buy it now. Who cares? Get the car. And certainly it could be flawless underneath. It really could. We don't know. And the reason why I do this channel is, if I was looking to buy this car, I would certainly want to go see it. But before I fly out there, right, or drive out there, depending on where you're at, you want a good gut feeling of, hey, is this thing going to be super nice or pretty nice? Or is this thing going to be like, ugh, underneath it is like, whoa, stay away. We know someone locally. We know of a guy locally that paid, I thought it was 35 grand. Someone told me recently it was more than that for a Lincoln Continental 65 convertible. And the thing literally has holes in the floor. Like it is horrible. And the number one thing that I always like to tell people is like, these cars can be very fun, but they can drive you almost to a divorce, right? If you get a car like this and it's flawless, man, life is great. Okay. And it may very well be, but if this car was rusty underneath or it had a lot of issues or things that were hidden, things are going to change pretty quickly. Trust me. Okay. It can happen. Now, here's the other thing that's intriguing about this. I mentioned I immediately knew what car this was, right? Because I look at these cars every single day. How did I know that? Again, rose color, red-ish carpet, and the aftermarket AC. Okay, so I went back to my archives, and I had saved some photos in the past, but instead of looking for those, I did a quick search, and this car was the same car that was in Melbourne, Florida. Okay, how do we know that? It's the same VIN. It ends with 0741. So if we go up here, 0741. Is that a bad thing? Absolutely not. But again, part of what I do, and I don't really offer as many services as I did in the past. Often if somebody goes, hey, I want to buy a car, or hey, can you give me your opinion on this? Yeah, we could work a deal out if you really want me to look at something for you and kind of give you my opinion, thumbs up or thumbs down. But this car, when it was for sale in Florida, I thought about buying it. Now, I'd have to dig through some of my folders to actually find all of the images that I saved, but these were the majority of them. And a lot of times I save these links, right? And I title them and I have them in my favorites. This car, if you look at what the previous owner's description of, it actually pretty solid. And this to me has a little bit better description in some ways than what we're seeing now. So to me, if somebody's asking six figures for this car almost, just take a few more minutes and add some more bullet points, add some more detail. This gentleman that owned it before, basically, and he's got a family photo in this car, I believe. His wife and him had purchased their, quote, dream car. They called it Shelly about 4 years ago. Now, what we don't know is maybe it didn't sell. Maybe this guy lives in Texas. I assume that it had sold. Maybe, he has had it. This guy over here says that he's had it for 4 years. So this was maybe 2 years ago. So I don't know. Maybe it's the same seller. We don't know. She was given a tremendous amount of joy, including starring role in our wedding. Dusty Rose, they kind of mentioned the color, a 63 only color that was custom ordered for the car by the original owner. So again, that's a little bit more. If I were to buy a car that I had planned on selling, I would copy a lot of this. Save yourself a little bit of time, and when you post it, use some of that same content, right? To kind of, especially if you don't know the backstory. The car draws attention everywhere it goes. She was restored at some point to a high quality, so this person doesn't really know about the restoration. Paint is magnificent, no waves or blemishes. A couple of chips, again, kind of being truthful there. The white top is literally as new, which is ironic because, again, I don't think we see, the white top here, but here we see they did change the top, which coincides with the story there. Go on to say the V8 runs strong. We drove her from Florida to Newport, Rhode Island with no issues. That's pretty awesome. The car's been maintained by Lincoln Land. This is a huge selling point. I do not know why sellers don't post photos if they have them, or this data right here, right? Lincoln Land. We know Chris at Lincoln Land. They are a tremendous asset to the Lincoln community. And if you have a car that was restored by them or any work was done, boom, right there. Whether you have the records or not, you could probably reach out to them. If I was selling this car, you'd bet I'd be posting some of those records. They specialize in Lincolns, of course. Serious parties may contact them for reference, right? Which is cool. The owner of the Lincoln land recently commented this was one of the nicest 64s he had seen. That goes a long way. Again, I'm over here going, man, I want to see underneath this car. If Chris really said that, Chris knows his Lincolns, and that goes a long way, right? Now, granted, if you can't confirm that, I can understand why someone may not want to say that in the new posting. Over the past few years, we've addressed any issues that have popped up, including new window motors, new fuel pump, new correct tires, et cetera, et cetera. Here you can see they did have the normal. These are the stock-ish tires with the correct white wall on it. Several $1,000s in receipts since the car has been in their custody. This is truly a special car. In my opinion, 64 is the best year. He kind of goes on there. And he talks about some other stuff. So let's look at the photos really quick. And again, how do we know? You could say, Jason, we don't know that this is the same car. Well, hear me out. The VIN is the same, okay? So the carpet, you will rarely ever see a rose color 64. And if it was ordered just for the person that ordered this car back in 64 or early 65, certainly that bodes because off the top of my head, I didn't think that this color was available in 64. But I sometimes have those details a little sketchy in my mind. But this color with this color interior and the aftermarket AC, that is the number one tell, and then the VIN number tells us what it was. Now, I can't remember. I didn't make a note of how much this car was for sale. I want to say it was like 40 or 50 grand, I think. Now, certainly this person here, if they happen to see this video, they may chime in and go, hey, it was more. That's why don't quote me on the price, the selling price. This added credence to the story that this gentleman had mentioned, like they had gotten married. They enjoy, this looks like a wedding and things like that. Very, very cool story. And again, it all kind of checks out. Second wind on the license plate. And certainly what we're seeing here, other than the air suspension, the top being changed, and the tires, and potentially the stereo, it's the same car. So again, what I would tell you is 96 grand. It's up to you. What do you guys think? Is it worth that much? 64s are very, very sought after. And I love 64. I loved airbag Lincolns. I love stock Lincolns as well. To me, this is a pretty cool car. I don't know that I would have bagged it, but I would certainly drive this car. The bottom line, if you're ever looking to sell a car, put more information out there. Okay, it's going to help making a decision. It's going to help someone convincing his or her, significant other. It's going to help. And to me, I think this over here gives a little bit more backstory. So why not copy and paste all this or save it when you buy a car if you know you're going to flip it in a year or two? Just my opinion. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for all the support. Stay on the rise, and we'll hit you soon with more content. Lincoln Addict, we out of here. Peace.